is believing, right? How many people in our lives that we have subscribe to that view? Can you imagine how the disciples felt this morning? They were overjoyed. Just moments before, they had been in the throes of depression and despair, wondering what in the world to make of things. Jesus' body missing from the tomb. And suddenly, he's there with them, telling them, peace be with you. They're overjoyed. I'm sure they thought Thomas would too be overjoyed at this. But instead, he tells them, I'm not buying it. Unless I see it, I'm not buying it. How many of us can say there's been moments in our lives that the same thing has been true? Or that we have people in our lives that exhibit that same belief? I have a younger brother. His name is Ron. He's a fine fellow, but he is a militant atheist. Militant. To the point of wearing Spaghetti Monsters t-shirts in public, just trying to insult people, and going out of his way to call, anytime you mention religion, to make it clear to you that he thinks that's superstition. For him, the rationale of logic and science is the only thing that can define reality in our world. For him, seeing is believing. How many of us can say the same thing is true of people we know? Because it really has become this widespread belief in our modern society. But is seeing really always believing? Let's think about this for a minute. Go out on the boardwalk on a beautiful night. Look up into the sky. There are thousands and thousands and millions of stars up there, more than we can count. But we know that we can point our finger and say, oh, there's Perseus. Oh, there's the North Star. In fact, we use them to navigate by. Seafarers and aircraft pilots use them to navigate by. But the appearance is masking a deeper reality. The closest star to us is our sun, but it takes more than 10 minutes for light that leaves the surface of the sun to get to us here on Earth. And the stars we look at in the sky that we are so sure we can point our finger at, the light coming from them takes, in some cases, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years to reach us here. So we could be pointing our finger at the North Star, for instance, and it is really in some entirely different place. Because what we're looking at, in a sense, is the past. Now, I know you're saying, okay, Mr. Rocket Scientist, these are crazy cosmological examples. What in the world are you trying to tell us? Let me give you another one for a moment. A lightning flash in the sky, for instance, on a rainy day. Or 4th of July fireworks. You can stand right here. They launch them down from the barge down by Long Beach Road very often. Right? They launch the shell. You see the flash. But it's not until a few seconds later that you hear the sound. What's going on? That's not reasonable, because we know that the sound has to accompany the flash. Now, at this point, my brother Ron would be saying, okay, Mr. Wizard, these are cheap rhetorical tricks you're using. Everybody knows that science can explain exactly what's going on here. And in a way, he'd be right. Science is a gift of God. The use of the gift of our reason to discern and make sense of the natural processes in these worlds we live in. It is a gift from God, I tell you. How much of it benefits us in medicine and in the ways we live, right? But as much as the gift as it is, it's limited. As a veteran of the scientific method, I will tell you that it's limited to phenomena that we can observe, measure, quantify. At best, we can see what's going on and then make what's good old-fashioned educated guesses about what actually caused them. But the truth is, even the most learned astrophysicists will tell you that they can tell you how they think the universe came into being, for instance, but they can't tell you who flipped the switch. We know. Another thing that works against science being the explanation for everything is its limitation of the fact that we know so much. Nobody can be an expert in every part of science, in every aspect, in every discipline. And just like doctors are specialists in the different parts of our body, so too do scientists specialize in chemistry, in physics, in nuclear sciences, and such. I've worked on many projects where we had all kinds of different disciplines working together to try and crack a hard nut, let's say. And we relied on their expertise in very much the same way your doctor relies on a specialist. Your general physician relies on a specialist to tell him when something is wrong with you that the GP doesn't know that much about. Or the same way trial attorneys use expert witnesses to prove a point in court. Ironically, that's the same thing we do in our faith, in our belief. We come to know of things by the witness of others, particularly in the New Testament. We have the different Gospels that are written by the evangelists. And we have the letters from St. Paul and some of the other apostles and the evangelists. In most instances, these were guys that knew Jesus firsthand. And they're telling us about him. Just like the chemical specialist is working with the guy that designs the skin for a high-performance aircraft so that the makeup of the upper atmosphere doesn't degrade the metal in the body, and takes the word for the chemist that he knows what he's talking about. Shouldn't we take the word of the most expert of witnesses, people that walked the earth with Jesus, that lived with him, that heard him, that saw him again after he rose from the dead? Now, the letters of St. Paul are among some of the oldest elements of the New Testament that we've got. And there's one, his first letter to the Corinthians, where he talks about the resurrection. He talks about the different and wide variety of number of people that witnessed it. Right? Now, scholars will tell you that letter was written within 20 years of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. And in fact, one element where he's talking about the resurrection, most scholars believe that dates from within 1 to 5 years of that event taking place. My larger point in this is we can trust the words of the New Testament, the witness of the apostles for a variety of reasons, but the strongest one is the fact that they were willing to give their lives for that truth. Use your reason for a minute. Think about it. If this was all some great hoax they were trying to perpetrate in order to make their lives better somehow, would they have been willing to die for it? And make no mistake, their self-sacrifice, their martyrdom is nothing remotely like the phenomena we sadly witness so often in our world today, where someone will strap a bomb to themselves and go into a crowded bus terminal and claim they're doing it in the name of God. These men didn't take anyone else with them, but chose to willingly suffer and face the same fate as our Lord, instead of renouncing what they knew was true. The blood of the apostles, all the apostles except one of them, met a terrible end. The blood of the apostles and the martyrs of the early church are more compelling evidence than any PowerPoint presentation or pages and pages of mathematics I've seen worked ever in my life. And I think your reason can tell you the same thing. That someone who's willing to die for something, for professing the truth of the resurrection of our Lord, really makes a compelling witness that event is a reality. The resurrection of Jesus is the central element of our faith, the central truth of our faith. He promised his disciples that he would rise again from the dead, and he did. Because of this, we can confidently put our trust in many of the other promises he made and all the things he said to us when he was here in this world. For instance, he said that if we were born again in the waters of baptism and lived lives of faith, that when when our earthly journey was done, that we would be with him and all who have gone before us, marked by the sign of faith. We can believe that. He also told his apostles that it was necessary that he suffer the ordeal of his passion that he did and rise again in order to fulfill all the scriptures. And when he was talking about scriptures, he was referring to what we would call the Old Testament these days, Hebrew scriptures. What does that mean for us? What that means is we can also put stock in that. Trust in God's promise to Abraham that one day his people would be the vehicle of spreading the truth of God to all nations. God has a plan. Trust that God has a plan. And that we can play a part in that if we choose to. Each of us are a creation of the creator of the cosmos. If you think about that for a minute, it's a mind-blowing thing. He has a plan for this world, and he has a plan for each of our lives. But just as he doesn't force us to love him, he doesn't force us to take part in that plan. No, he invites us. So don't be surprised if he puts an opportunity in front of you to use the particular gifts and talent that you have been given just to make Christ's love and the love of God present in the world today. See things through the eyes of faith. Faith and reason are not in opposition. And that's the mistake most people make. They're not competing worldviews, they're actually complementary. And it is only by marrying them together that we see reality in its fullest sense. That our lives take on the greatest level of meaning. To many people, this would seem like just a church full of people. Things we sacrifice is simply bread and wine. But just like the stars, supposed apparent position in the sky masks the deeper reality of where they really are. So too is it only that through the eyes of faith, we can see Christ present in the assembly here, like he promised he would be, wherever 2 or 3 were gathered in his name or more. And then we recognize his real presence in the body and blood that we believe is the Holy Eucharist that we will share today. So as we come to the Lord's table this morning, let us give thanks for the gift of faith and the ability to use our reason to be sure that that makes sense in a world that tells us otherwise so often. Let's also pray that for the grace to recognize the times when we're supposed to step up and make God's mercy and love present in the world today, especially to those people who are doubting Thomases and may need to actually see and experience his favor and his love so that they too may come to believe. Let's take a look at the world through our eyes of faith. For it is only by doing so that we can truly be sure that seeing is